3 hours after she left, the rain started. I lay awake the rest of the night listening to the shutters bang and the wind cry like lost children weeping. How could you hate what you loved so dearly? I tried not to think what the voice had told me the last time at the well about killing Cindy. But that's exactly what it said. And that's why I'd threatened Cindy tonight, I realized now. I was only doing the bidding of the voice, acting on its suggestion. I had been shocked. I had resisted it, but I saw now that he could also see the future. He saw that Cindy would meet a stranger at the mall, just as he saw that Cindy would soon be ready to dump me. That's why he'd suggested I kill her. I didn't see or hear from Cindy for 3 days. Things were bad at work. I couldn't concentrate. I sent a wrong shipment to the new co-op they're building out on the edge of the old Galton farm, and my boss did something he'd never done before, started yelling at me right in front of customers. It was pretty embarrassing. Lonesome, I even thought of going to see my folks, but anything I said would just lead to I told you so's. Looked up a few buddies, too, but they were like strangers now. Oh, we went through some of the old routines and made some plans for doing some autumn fishing up at Carter Lake, but I left the tavern that night feeling more isolated than ever. I wondered what Cindy was doing. I kept seeing her naked and mounting the mall guy the way she sometimes mounted me. I drove and drove and drove, prairie highways leading to more prairie highways, cows and horses restless in the starry, rolling Iowa darkness. Sometimes I merged Cindy and Laurie into one. Sometimes I wanted to cry, but was unable to. How could you hate what you loved so dearly? Warm summer arrived like a gift a few days later. People out here always go a little crazy when summer comes. I think they get intoxicated by all the scents of the flowers and the trees and the sweet, sad songs of the birds. I do. Ordinarily, anyway. But this summer was different. I couldn't appreciate any of it. It was as if I'd been entombed in my sorrow over Cindy leaving me. There was no room for anything but her. I saw them then, Town Square, around 9 o'clock, walking slowly past the Civil War Memorial, her arm through his, same way we used to walk. He was handsome, of course. Cindy wouldn't have to settle for anything less. I stumbled into an alley and was sick. Literally. Took the lid off a reeking garbage can and threw up. Then I went into a grocery store and bought a pint of Jim Beam and went back to the alley and thought about what I was going to do. How I was going to handle all this. I'm not much of a drinker. By the time I finished the pint, I was pretty foggy. I was also pretty sleepy. I leaned against the garbage can and slept. A country western song woke me a few hours later. Some poor truck-driving sumbitch had lost his honey. You know how country songs go. I got up all stiff and chilly and reoriented myself. I took a leak while never taking my eye from the quarter moon so brilliant in the midnight sky. I felt homesick, but I also felt as if I had no home to go to, and never would. 20 minutes later, I stood out in front of the police station. Town this size, the station is in the old courthouse. Neon sign above the westernmost entrance says, Police. There's a lockup in the basement and a traffic court on second floor. On first floor is where the 7 police officers work at various times of day and night. I was going to do it. I was going to walk right up those stairs, right inside that building, and tell whichever cop was on duty just what Cindy and I had been up to. Hey, Spence! Voice was familiar. I turned to see Donnie Newton, whom I'd gone to school with, walking up the street. He wore the dark uniform of the local gendarmes. "Hey, Donnie. Since when did you become a cop?" "Took my test last year, then went to the police academy in Des Moines for 3 months, and voila, here I am. Doesn't pay jack shit for the first couple years, but given all the layoffs we've been having, I'm lucky to have a steady paycheck." Then he ceased being plain Donnie Newton and became Officer Donnie Newton. Suspicious. "So what are you doing here?" Maybe Donnie could make it easy for me. I'd known him a long time. Maybe he'd let me tell it all my way and not get all self-righteous about it. My mouth opened. My brain wrote 3 or 4 lines of dialogue for my tongue to speak just to get things going. But somehow my tongue wouldn't speak them. "Hey, you all right, man?" Then I just wanted to get out of there. Fast. Little too much to drink. "You all right to drive?" I nodded. "Yeah." "Sure?" "Positive. I'd be happy to run you home." "Thanks, Donnie, but I'll be fine." But he sure was giving me a funny look. I nodded a good night and took off walking to my car, knowing he was watching me again. At home, I drank 4 beers and sat in the dark kitchen and listened to an owl who sounded every bit as lonely as I felt. Then I tumbled into bed and began 7 hours of troubled and exhausting sleep. At 6, I dragged myself from bed for a quick shave and shower. I just lathered up when I looked out the bathroom window and saw Donnie Newton, still in uniform, doing something to my right rear tire. There's no garage or concrete drive. I just park on the grass on the east side of the house. I couldn't figure out what the hell he was doing. He was down on one knee, spraying something in the tire tracks I'd made on the grass. Then he took this small wooden frame and put it over a portion of the tire marks he'd just sprayed. Only then did I understand what he was doing, getting an impression of my tracks the way the cops do at a crime scene. But why the hell was he interested in my tire tracks? Had there been a hit and run last night, and he suspected me of driving drunk and leaving the scene of an accident? He left quickly, probably had no idea I'd seen him, probably figured I was still asleep. At noon, I saw him again, Donnie. When did he sleep? He was out in the lumber yard with my boss, Mr. Axminster. Couple times when they were talking, they'd both looked back at the front office where I was. Then he was gone. The rest of the afternoon, Mr. Axminster acted pretty funny. He was already pissed that I'd been so preoccupied lately and that I was making a lot of mistakes. But now it wasn't so much that he was mad, more that he wasn't quite sure what to make of me, as if I were some kind of alien being or something. Just before quitting time, the phone rang. I was checking in some wallpaper kits, so Mr. Axminster had to take it. He talked a few minutes in a whispery kind of voice, so I figured it was his lady friend. Rumor had it that he was sweet on a waitress named Myrna over at the Chow Down Cafe. I think it was true because she called here sometimes. He was always boasting about how good a Lutheran he was, so his being a family man and having a little strange on the side surprised me. Then he said, "It's for you, Spence." He tried to act like everything was just fine and dandy, but he was sweating a lot suddenly, and it wasn't hot, and he couldn't look me directly in the eye. He handed me the phone. I said hello. "Spence?" "Uh-huh." "Donnie Newton." I looked at Mr. Axminster, who looked quickly away. "Wondered if we could get together." "When?" "You're off in 15 minutes, right?" "Right. How about then?" "Have a beer somewhere, you mean? Maybe a little bumper pool?" But I knew better, knew what he was really up to. Well, actually, I was hoping you'd sort of stop over to the station." "The station? How come?" I played it real dumb. "Oh, just a couple things came up, hoping you could help us clear them up a little." "Well, sure, Donnie, if it's important. I'd sure appreciate it." "Sure thing, Donnie. About 15 minutes?" 15 minutes would be great. That'll give me time to empty the old bladder and grab us a pair of Pepsis. See you then, Donnie." Panic. Tried to control it, closed my eyes, forced myself to take deep breaths, gripped the edge of the counter so I'd quit shaking. Good old Cindy. The only person who could possibly have interested the police in my tire tracks. We'd used my car on all our murders and robberies. If Cindy had decided to blame me and to cooperate with the authorities in reeling me in, Cindy would likely avoid jail herself. And she'd have her brand new beau. "They asked me about you, Spence, in case you're wondering." When I opened my eyes, Mr. Axminster was standing there. "You've gotten yourself in some serious trouble, Spence." He shook his head. "When Donnie Newton told me, well," he looked very sad. "I've known your folks all my life, Spence. When they hear about this..." But I wasn't waiting around for any more of his hand-wringing dramatic presentation. I ran out to my car, hopped in, tore out of the driveway. I drove. I have no idea where, just around, and fast, very fast. When I was aware of things again, it was an hour later, and I was racing up a gravel road, leaving a plume of dust in my wake. Instinctively, I headed for the only place I'd find any wisdom or solace. I pulled into the surrounding woods so nobody could see my car from the highway. I waited till dark before finding the trail that led to the well. Downhill, a crow sat on the rickety remains of the cabin. He was big and shiny in the cool dusk. The well looked the same as I approached it, the native stone of the pit a dead white in the darkening shadows. I knelt down next to the well and put my head down inside. I needed to hear him, needed his wisdom. Right away I started crying. I was going to lose it all. My job, my girl, my freedom. All I'd done was what the voice in the well had told me to do, and I had no control over that. "You'll feel better soon." I let those words echo in my mind for a time before asking him what he meant, and he told me that I'd soon know what he meant. And right after that, I heard her laugh. Cindy, coming down the path. Then a second voice, male, the guy she'd met at the mall. Everything was dark now. I staggered to my feet and scurried into the woods. They were holding hands and laughing, and she was telling him about the well. "You really love putting me on, don't you?" he said. "It's not a put on, honest. There's this voice down the well. Not just a voice, an entity." "Hey, big word, entity." "Right," Cindy said. She slid her arm around him, kissed him playfully on the chin. I was afraid I was going to be sick again. Real sick. "It's an alien." "From outer space?" he said. "Exactly." He laughed again. What a con artist. He sat on the edge of the well pit and took her to him and then kissed her long and deep and passionately. And then the knife was in my hand, the knife I'd used on the mechs, and suddenly I was screaming and running from the woods toward the well, and I saw the mall guy look startled and then terrified, and I heard Cindy scream. But I didn't stop. I ran straight up to the guy and stabbed him in the chest, stabbed him again and again and again. He fell to the ground, all blood and dying gasps now, but I kept right on stabbing him until I heard Cindy's feet slapping up the path as she tried to escape. But she wasn't going to escape. No way.